In this video, I'm going to show you how I draw mountains and forests and deserts and swamps and cities so you can make awesome looking fantasy world maps. Yeah! Alright, so I'm going to walk you through all the little pieces and parts of what it takes to create a fantasy world map. I'm actually going to show you two different styles of maps. The first is a super simple, anyone can do it. I mean, anyone can make this kind of map. I call it the icon style. This is like the super old school hex crawl kind of map without the hexes. And then we'll move on to something a little more advanced. The kind of map that I really love to make, I'm calling it the Tolkien style map. This is like the most popular, I'd say, black and white style of fantasy map. I'm not going to pretend to know all the history, but I sort of see it as made popular by the fantasy tradition of The Hobbit and Lord of the Rings, the maps that were published in those books that J.R.R. Tolkien made. This style of map is actually just as easy as the icon style. It just takes a little bit more time, a little bit more patience. So yeah, let's jump in. I'm going to show you how to draw a bunch of mountains and trees and swamps and cities and all kinds of stuff. Let's go. Okay, so here is an example I am creating of an icon style map. I'm starting with just the outline of an island and then filling in all of the details with these little icons that indicate what type of terrain or landscape is in that area of the map. So the reason I wanted to start with this style and not just jump into a more complicated one is because I wanted to show a type of map that looks awesome but is super easy to draw. Like, if you know how to write the alphabet, you can draw this map. And the cool thing about creating these icons is you don't have to worry about making cool drawings or fighting with the tools that you're using. All you have to do is plan out your map, where the things go on the map, and then you can draw them by hand. Super easy. Speaking of tools, just in case you're curious, for all of the drawing I'm doing in this video, I'm using regular copy paper and a Papermate Flare medium pen. This is just a felt tip pen, pretty standard. It's cool because if you hold it vertically, you can get a nice thin line, and then the more you angle the pen and the more you press down on it, the thicker the line you get. So you can get a little bit of variation in the line, but I'm really not focused on that with any of these drawings. Okay, so now that you have a picture of all of the elements brought together to make a map, let's jump into how to draw the individual pieces, and you'll see how crazy easy this is. Okay, so I'm starting with the coastline and water. I usually double up the thickness of the line, kind of draw it once and then go over it and make it twice as thick. I do the same with the rivers and the outlines of the lake, just to make it really clear how to separate the land from the water. And then drawing the water is as simple as you've ever done it. It's just the little squiggly wave lines that you've seen on every map. It's how you draw water as a kid. It's the most basic, sort of like up and down, really shallow, connected U-shape waves. All right, mountains. This is what I'm talking about when I'm saying icons. Super simple. I'm just drawing triangles and filling them in. I think the only challenge to drawing these maps are keeping these shapes consistent from one to the next. I mean, I guess with mountains, if you wanted to show that there's bigger mountains, you could make the triangles bigger and smaller and all that, but I'm trying to keep all of the icons a consistent size. That's the only drawing thing that I'm really keeping in the back of my mind. A slight variation, if you want to draw a little snowy mountain, you can just do a little zigzag and leave the top blank, and then it's a snow-capped mountain. Trees! Super simple. You're going to draw a circle, and then you're going to draw a little stick coming out the bottom. It's as easy as it gets for trees, and you can just plop them all over the place to make a forest. You can vary the shape a little bit, make them a little more egg-shaped. I didn't draw it here. You could even do little cloud-shaped trees with sticks coming out the bottom. I did draw the triangle-shaped trees here, but I didn't use them on the map because I think they kind of look a little too similar to the mountains. The mountains are big triangles, so then having little triangle pine trees was just a little too repetitive shape-wise. So I did use this other pine tree shape, which is just the same stick tree trunk, and then you draw 3 upside down V's on top of it. Really simple, really easy to fill out a large space with a bunch of these trees and make a forest. Even more simple is the desert. To do the desert in this style, I just do little clusters of dots, 5 little dots, 4 little dots, 3 little dots, just kind of spread out over the entire desert. You're basically just drawing sand here. Swamps, same thing, super easy. I'm just drawing an icon of what would maybe be like tall grass. 3 vertical lines next to each other. That's all you need to indicate a swamp. Okay, cities, I'm going traditional old school fantasy maps where you just put a dot for a village, a dot with a circle for a town, and then a city. A full-fledged city would be a star with a circle around it. Really, really simple visual way to indicate where your cities and towns go on the map. And then roads are just a dashed or dotted line. And the reason I'm doing a dotted line instead of a solid one is because the rivers are solid lines and we got to do something to differentiate the two. So roads get to be a dotted line. Looks kind of like a path, which makes sense for a road. Oh, I forgot to draw hills with the mountains. So hills, I'm just doing like a mound, just a arcing line going from left to right, just little bumps in the landscape. And there you have it, the icon style map. This one couldn't be any easier. I just really wanted to show this example of a map that you can make in like 15 or 20 minutes, depending on how complicated your world is. But something that looks cool, isn't hard to draw, and conveys all the information that your map needs to. Really, I just want to show that this process does not have to be intimidating, and you don't need any fancy equipment, you don't need any crazy art tools, or be super skilled at drawing to make an awesome looking fantasy map. So if you're intimidated by drawing, try out this icon style of map. Yeah. Okay, before we jump into the Tolkien Style Map, Tolkien Style Map, I want to show you my closet. I know the lighting isn't the greatest, but I have this big flat file full of stuff. In this drawer, I have all of my miniatures, my paper miniatures. So I know I've been focusing a lot on drawing maps on this channel lately, but I have made a ton of paper miniatures for my D&D game. I have an entire pack, 50 miniatures altogether. There's a big green dragon, giant spiders and bugbears and ghouls, all kinds of fun stuff. Technically, it's everything you need for the starter set, the official D&D starter set. I'm going to have a link down in the description below where you can get all of these miniatures, print them out, make them yourself. There's a flaming skull. It's got a bunch of player characters, rangers and fighters and wizards, all kinds of fun stuff. I also have these D&D inspired pins. Those are in my shop on my website. If you're a dungeon master that wants a cool pin, or you're a wizard that likes throwing fireballs, check them out on my website. Okay, advertisement over. Back to drawing map stuff. Whoa, it's bright. Okay, now I'm jumping into the Tolkien style map, and all this really is just kind of bumping up the variation on the icons, adding a little bit more detail, doing a little bit more planning and drawing to make a more varied and visually interesting map. So as I'm drawing this, you can see I'm starting the exact same way. I'm drawing the exact same map, only in this different sort of upgraded style, starting off with the coastline or the outline of the continent, and then moving into mountains and all the other details from there. Now, before I jump into the specifics of each piece and part, I want to say that making a key, which is what I'm about to show you, is a really, really helpful way of starting to create your own fantasy map. Instead of jumping right into the final map like I'm doing here, spending the time on a separate sheet of paper to figure out how you're going to draw the mountains, how you're going to draw the forests, the desert, the swamp, the cities, all the little things, even if you don't draw them like I'm showing you here, you spend the time figuring them out. Then once you jump into the map, you can spend all your brain energy on figuring out where all these different terrain types and cities are going to go and not worrying about how you're going to draw each of the things. Alright, so this is the example of the Tolkien Style Map. Let's jump into exactly how I draw each of the pieces and parts for this style of map. Okay, so just like the icon style, I'm starting with the coastline. I always start with the outline of the continent. I'm doubling it up just the same way, but instead of drawing the little whoop 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 waves, I'm doing a thinner outline around the landmass and then another thin outline that is broken up. Just sort of looks like waves. Or alternatively, you can do a thin outline around the outside and then these horizontal dashes. It's something I tried out in the last world map video I did, and I think it's a really cool look. You know, a really fun way to indicate water that is more textural than purely representational, like drawing actual waves. Alright, time to do some mountains. So if you think about them the same way you do as the icon style as triangles, it makes drawing mountains really easy. The only difference here is I'm starting to overlap the sort of triangle shapes and I'm not drawing the bottom. It's more of an upside down V than a completed triangle. And also it's not just a straight upside down V, it is varied and kind of chunky and rocky looking. That's something that you can practice and you'll get the feel for really quick. Chunk it up, make it look wavy, and then to give it a little bit of depth, also chunky, wavy line going from the peak down, and then shading one half of the mountain, filling in the shadow of the mountain basically. And so that technique combined with you overlapping these V's will give this mountain range a ton of depth. It'll go from looking like a little mountain was just plopped down to actually looking like a mountain range. Alternatively, if you don't want to fill in everything with black, you can do the same sort of jagged vertical line going down from the peak, and then some diagonal lines that follow the slant of the mountain that you made with the upside down V to give that side of the mountain a shadow. And here's why you want to start on a key. With just a little bit of practice, you can get the feel for how to create actually rocky looking mountains instead of just straight lines and harsh shadows. It only takes the tiniest, littlest bit of practice. And the same thing for the hills. So basically this is the same as the icon style. I'm just adding a little bit of shadow to one side, or just like the mountains, if you don't want to fill in one side completely with black, you can do little diagonal lines that get smaller to sort of give the hill a little bit of dimension. Alright, just like the mountains, the trees are basically the same as the icon style, just getting a little tiny bit more complicated. So it's basically drawing a wobbly circle, and instead of just one stick underneath, I draw two, and then I even put just a little bit of shadow under the edge of the circle to show that the leaves on the tree are casting a shadow on the trunk. And then layering them is super easy. If you do the bottom line of your forest, these simple trees kind of squish next to each other, then all you're doing is drawing the overlap of the trees that recede behind it. You're just drawing the little top part of the tree. And then the same goes for the pine trees, just a triangle with the trunk. Layer them the exact same way to fill out an awesome, super detailed looking forest that is really just a bunch of circles or triangles. Takes a little bit of time, but looks super awesome. Or you can draw the complete forest by just indicating the circles, by doing little squiggly. It almost looks like a cloud with tree trunks sticking out of it. Or you can do jagged pine trees and kind of clump them all together and not have to draw each individual little tree. Alright, the desert. So I think the easiest way to do this is, you could just use the same icon style and do dots, but I sometimes do like small little dashed horizontal lines, or if I really want to fill out the space, I will do straight horizontal lines that are like different lengths, like some little dots and some longer lines. This gives off like the super flat kind of desert, not the sand dune type deserts, which you can do by sort of pushing and making a little more wavy versions of the hills that I drew before. Swamps. This is just pushing the idea of the icon a little bit further. So instead of drawing 3 just straight vertical lines, I'm sort of making the grass kind of sprawl out a little bit. And then by adding the little horizontal lines on the end, it sort of flattens it out. So it makes it look more, I don't know, it just makes it look more like a lowland marsh than a field of grass. And I also did a secondary version that's a little more grassy, wavy looking. Okay, real quick, I forgot to do rivers. I like to draw rivers that are just like a black wavy line, but you can also open them up and do 2 lines to actually make the river kind of feed out into the ocean. You can add these little marks, make it look like the land is descending down into the river, because the river is going to be like the lowest part of the land. Try it out, see which kind you like better. Roads, I'm keeping them the same. Dashed line looks the best. It communicates road instantly, so I'm not going to change it. And now we come to the cities. So this is where a lot of variation can come in super quickly. It's going to take a little bit of trial and error on your part to figure out what kind of cities you like the looks of. I like to draw these little houses that have slanted roofs, and it's like a faked 1-point perspective. It's like not even 1-point perspective, but you can see 2 sides of the house. And then if you want to give it a sort of medieval flair, you can add a little tower with a cone top on it, or, you know, drawing these forts, you know, with the brick walls and the towers and stuff, and that sort of tombstone shape gate. The more complex you make the drawing, the bigger the city looks. So for a village, I start with just one little house. A town gets a house and a tower, and then a city gets 2 houses and a tower. And then you can go crazy with it. Make wizard towers and orc towns and different variations on the houses and the forts. So that leads me to a point that I didn't really show off in these completed world maps, and that is that adding a little bit of variation can go a long way in upgrading your map. You know, so maybe there's one giant volcano mountain that's way bigger than all of the other mountains, or the capital city is super huge, or there's just a unique looking wizard tower that is visually different from all of the cities and towns on your map that sort of tell the person looking at the map, oh, this is a point of interest. It's a cool place that I want to know more about. And that is the fun of creating these maps. Really, really simple drawing. You can create a world for your D&D players or people reading your fantasy book to lose their imagination in. So figuring out these little icons that are really just a representation of something more. So a little triangle can be an entire mountain. A circle with a stick can be a forest, or just a little house can be an entire town. Combining all of them together and laying them out into a map, it creates a world of possibility. And I think the really cool thing about it is that it's not difficult to do. I know I keep saying it, but you don't have to be good at drawing to make really, really awesome looking maps. So I hope that this is encouraging to you, and I hope you give it a try. If you're feeling intimidated, try out that icon style and then work your way up to the Tolkien style. I really, really hope you spend a little bit of time to make a map for your D&D game or your fantasy book or whatever. Please share it with me on social media. Hit me up on Instagram or Twitter. I love, love, love seeing what you make. It's really, really special for me and means a lot when you send me the stuff that you create. I love seeing it. All right, that's it for this video. Let me know if you have any questions about the process in the comments down below. Hit me with a subscribe and ring the little notification bell to be alerted when new videos go up. Thanks so much for watching, and I'll see you in the next one. See ya!